we are now going to turn to Joanne Kyger's. It's Been a Long Time is one name, one title. Notes from the Revolution might be the title. It might be a subtitle. And we're going to begin this conversation by asking Zach to play the audio of Joanne Kyger. I believe it's a fairly old audio. I met Joanne once, and she always, even to the end, sounded like this. But it is a young voice for sure.
Notes from the Revolution. During the beat of this story, you may find other beats. I mean a beat. I mean cantus. I mean firm us. I mean paper. I mean in the kingdom, which is coming, which is here in discovery. It is also Om Shri Maitreya. You don't go across my vibes, but with them, losing the pronoun. It is thy. It is thee. It is I. It is me. Machines are metal. They serve us. We take care of them. This is to me, and this is to you. You say you to me, and I say you to you. Some machines are very delicate. They are precise. They are not big metal stampers. She made enough poetry to keep her company. My vibes. You intercepted my vibes. The long shadows, the long shadows, the long shadows. My sweet little tone is my arm. On what only? The song that girl sang, the song that girl sang, the song that girl sang.
Wow, that's Joanne Kyger. Okay, so what we're going to do, everybody's smiling. What we're going to do is we're going to roughly divide the topics, and I'm going to ask for random raising hand, although Gabi's going to start. Sorry, Gabi. We're going to divide the conversation it's impossible to divide a conversation into the topics of this poem, but we're going to roughly do it. We're going to first talk about pronouns. Then we'll talk about machines and machinery. Then we'll talk about song, singing. And finally, we'll talk about what revolution has to do with any of this. Okay? So pronouns, machinery, song, singing, and revolution. Gabi, start us off on pronouns, and I'm going to ask Knar and Davy just to follow up on any quick thoughts about the way pronouns work here. Gabi, okay. Sorry to spring that on you.
Oh, I'm absorbing your topic list. It's like, all right, pronouns. Okay. Well, I think what I want to say, the direct line to go to, right, is in the second stanza, so it is also Om Shri Maitreya, you don't go across my vibes, but with them, comma, losing the pronoun, and then we get this sort of series. It is thy, it is thee, it is me. And that kind of starts to organize the poem after that moment. But weirdly, what I think I want to do, which maybe it will be a bad task as the first commenter, because slightly earlier to the play on the phrase cantus firmus, cantus firm us. So here we get like a serious kind of pronoun play on a phrase. The cantus firmus is a musical term for when you take basically an original pre-existing melody and then you set another melody to it to create a counterpoint with it. So basically if I took, row, row, row your boat, and then I was singing like some original thing on it that would counterpoint with it, and that created a new song. It's a very like Gregorian chant technique. But so it has this sort of idea of revolution and sort of reincarnation that's all over this poem, but in a very sort of like precise technical sense. But to break it into firm us, cantus, to have this kind of like we that sort of haunts it. I don't know, it does something, and it sets us on a set of priorities, right, as this poem starts, that I think are like disorienting, sort of interesting, and clearly has that Buddhist influence. There's my start.
Great start. Thank you, Gabi. And I want to ask Kate what she makes of I mean a beat, I mean cantus, I mean firm us, I mean paper, I mean, etc. The reason I ask Kate is because there's nobody who has thought more about what it means for a poet to say I mean than Kate Colby. So, Kate, what is Joanne doing there? And what is the meta quality of this? Shouldn't you just write a line that you mean rather than say I mean? Because frankly, I could go around all day and say I mean, put I mean as a prefix in front of every statement I make. And I would be simply emphasizing the fact that I mean something, which is obvious. Kate, what's your experience with this?
I mean, so much about this poem is about making and blurring distinctions, and I think that's what the topic of pronouns is doing here too. A pronoun exists to make or reinforce a distinction, and throughout the poem, she's sort of setting up and then blurring distinctions. So by the time you get to losing the pronoun and the thy, thee, I, me, and moving on from there, I get this very kind of Whitmanian feeling of every atom that belongs to me is good belongs to you. And so, but early on with the I means, she's sort of self-qualifying and making distinctions and making finer points that she then kind of undoes. So I see her doing both those things through the poem, like defining things and then blurring or blowing up those definitions. And by the end, just to go back to the pronouns, and I'm not great on grammar and parts of speech, but that in the song That Girl Sang, it was unclear to me reading it whether that goes with the song or the girl, and it was interesting to hear her read it because I believe she emphasized the song That Girl Sang, so that that distinguished the girl, not the song. Or I might have that backwards, but anyway, I don't know if I answered the question.
You did, and I want to invite Laynie to join me in a little riffing on this thing of I mean, partly in deference to, in honor of Kate's fabulous book, which is called I Mean, which is a long poem, in which probably 97% of the lines start with I mean. Let's do a lightning round riff, Laynie. Like, what are some of the things I mean could mean? I'll start. I mean, and that could mean I really am like a parent to a child. I mean you need to clean this room up.
You're serious.
You're serious.
Is what
okay.
that means.
Your
Okay.
turn.
I mean could also mean that what I just said one sentence ago wasn't exactly right, and I'm modifying it, or I'm backpedaling because of the response I'm getting to
My turn. I mean could mean literally and sincerely. I'm explaining myself.
Yeah.
Your turn.
I mean could be another beat in the poem, like I'm
Yes.
stalling for time and I don't know what to say next, so I'm going to say
Yes.
I mean.
And that might be, Kate, back to you in a second, Kate, on this. That might be what's meant by I mean, because what you do by separating beat, cantus, firm, us, paper, kingdom, etc., is to create a beat by using a meta-poetic phrase, I mean, all right? So during the beat of the story, you might find other beats. I mean a beat. I mean cantus. I mean firmus. I mean paper. I mean the kingdom, etc.
Well, it also has and again, it's a kind of a Whitmanian gesture. It's a listing quality where it's like, I mean this, I mean that, I mean this, and I also mean that, where she's collecting the world around her and sort of, incorporating it into the self and vice versa.
Yes. Thank you. We're going to turn to the singing, the song, the singer, the girl. I want everybody to wave your hand if, when you were thinking about, Knar's already waving her hand. When you heard about all the singing and a girl singing and the beat, right, and tone, sweet tone. There's another musical word in here, vibes, right? When you heard that, you first thought, oh, this is a poem. Poems are traditionally sung. The ancient idea of a poem is that it's sung. It is often a muse singing. It is often a girl singing. If you thought of that, wave. Okay, a few abstentions, mostly here in the room. Lily, we've been, of course, reading Bergvall, who was very interested in this, but does this help us at all? And then we're going to turn to Camara.
Yes, because I think okay, so I think I've got it. So she talks about the machines, and some are very delicate. I think that she's talking about a record player in the last
Yeah, it
couple
seems
stanzas.
to be in that last, and
Right,
also
and
the sweet little, the tone is my arm.
The tone
Yeah.
arm is the
Lily's
piece
got
that
it.
you pull over to the record and then either push down or like the button goes down. And if you look at a record player, it has a certain look to it that's kind of substantial, but then if you really look at the piece that's reading the music itself, it's extremely small and delicate needle, and that can get really bent and cause really strange distortions. And so what I imagine was like she's talking about the contradictions that machine holds, and then those last lines are like a skip in the record, which is when there's something kind of breakdown between the groove in the record and how the needle is pressed, so it's repeating that line over and over.
Wow, love that reading. Love that reading.
The word I was really drawn to is vibes, and I think that in terms of ModPo's kind of power during the pandemic, kind of has to do with the ModPo vibes. in the sense that this poem is talking about, because I think that like the phrase Om Shri Maitreya is a mantra that's used to kind of summon this prophesied Buddha that has not yet come to earth, that is going to usher in a kind of period of total selflessness and of non-distinction as well between people. So I think that the kind of repetition of vibes through the poem, which is like a kind of strangely like it's a word that like the more I pay attention to the kids and the youth, like everyone is using the word vibes. It's like a very crisp and current word. But and the verb is to like vibing. But vibes, like music and like shadows, are things that they're vibrations that emanate from a person or a place or from a thing that if you're in the in the circle where the vibes are present, you will resonate with those same vibes. So
Great.
If I say, oh, they have really good vibes, part of it is that it impacts me, and my vibes impact you. So like vibes are like song or like shadows. They extend beyond the self, but especially like sound, they're vibrations.
Yeah, there's a lot of sound here. I mean, Lily's reading helps us with that. Vibes comes from vibrations. Vibrations are sounds. And if you are on the same wavelength as me, which would be a thought, a 60s era thought. So I'm going to ask real quick lightning round. Anybody just nod at me so I can see that you have something to say about this. Where do we find revolution in this poem? And how are these, if notes is to be read as musical, where do we find notes, sounds, vibes from the revolution? They could be tonal, they could be idiomatic, as we've been talking about just now. Jason helped us with that. Hey, you've intercepted my vibes, man. Like I was on this wavelength, but you messed me up. Okay, so Gabi looks like yes. Thought on where you locate revolution, and we're all going to make these quick.
Okay, what I want to say is what's interesting about how revolution shows up here is that it's in both of its meanings of total change and repetition. So a revolution like a revolution of the planet, or a revolution like change the society totally. And so you have things like the Maitreya, the future Buddha. You have the Cantus Firmus, you have the sort of kingdom to come, that all signal both repetition of something that has been already there and total change. And so in that sense, I feel like this is not the kind of poem that's like, revolution, change everything, nothing's working, we need everything new, we need to imagine horizons or whatever. It's not that kind of a poem. It's actually significantly much more ambivalent in the sense that it actually is kind of like curious about repetition or forms of doing again. There you go.
Love that. Love that. And particularly when you get to, if it's the 60s and you're dealing with revolutionary politics and you start valuing the sweet little tones, that's going to sound almost reactionary. Don't give me that sweet little tone stuff. Don't do little music. So there's real ambivalence here. Okay, I'm looking to nodders. Davy, revolution where? Where do we find it?
I mean, this is really just to say that, Lily, your reading changed my life. And that one place we see revolution is because this is a poem about, as Lily taught me, a record player, and record players revolve, such that the revolution that is being discussed here is perhaps just the revolution of a skipping record, which is to say that in the second stanza, you don't go across my vibes, but with them, is to say that not moving from element to element of the record, moving from the various grooves in the record. A friend of mine makes records, and I really wish he were here because he'd be able to.
Vinyl?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he does. He presses them. And you're losing the pronoun because the record is skipping. You don't know what the record is saying, such that during the beat of the story, you may find other beats because the record is skipping. If the beat of the story is the song as it was intended, we're getting a different version of the song because we're getting it distorted. That the revolution itself, if a record skips, then the revolution it expected to take is distorted, is a different shape than it was intended to be.
So it's metallically meta, because it's really, when you say, you say you want a revolution, well, we all want to change the world, which is also an ambivalent song that also skips on the record, Revolution number 9. So this is really kind of like consonant with what the Beatles are trying to figure out to do about pressing all that vinyl, and is that the aesthetic or is that the political? I really like where that's going. All right, let's take 2 more nodders. Laynie's a nodder.
So the revolution is also in the poetry that kept her company and in the machine that could potentially print the writing that's being written. But I'm also hearing it in a really...
Like a press, like a printing press.
Right. The revolution happens in song, in many voices. And so when one person starts with one beat, that allows others to join in. So once you hear the song, you join the song. So revolution is in the song, but also singing invokes the revolution.
Nice. And that helps with beginning, which is to say, look, I got my revolution, you got your revolution, we're going to go round and round on this. This is what poetry does at its best. During the beat of this story, you may find other beats, but I mean, and I mean, and I mean. So I'm looking. I don't see any revolutionists.
Kate wanted to say something.
Kate, revolution, where, how?
Oh, I wanted to return to the jettisoning of pronouns, and with it the hierarchies, the subordinations of grammar that creates this anti-capitalist pooling of phenomena that the poem evinces. So what she's doing on the page manifests this kind of combination of hierarchical elements.
Beautiful. Thank you, Laynie, and thank you for choosing this poem. There is a poem talk about this poem, and I kind of want to say that it belongs probably with the beats because that's the closest in Modpo, because that's the closest we can come for Joanne, and Joanne would not have protested much. In fact, this poem was written, probably Creeley was on the other side of the room, in that wonderful town of theirs. And so it belongs there, but it also belongs across Modpo because it is a kind of perfect kind of poem that doesn't do much semantically, but is all about its poetics and what it's saying about the poem as a sound and the poem as a gesture and the poem as rhetoric. And that's what we do best here, is to deal with poems like that. It is our hope that people watching on YouTube will have started thinking about this poem and thought, I don't know how these people are going to deal with this. And the fact is that scarily, we didn't think anything but that ourselves. And here we come up with something I think pretty good. So thank you.